Other announcements, what's coming up? So next month we've got two things happening actually. So our regular second Tuesday meeting, our virtual meeting, this one is on March 11th, and Julie Trelstad is going to be talking about partnering for promotion, teaching your authors and yourself to build market presence. So this will be a marketing focused, marketing program focused presentation, which should be very interesting. Also next month, for those of you that are here in the Twin Cities or want to make the trek to come here, on Thursday, March 20th, IBPA is hosting an in-person panel, which they're calling the rather long title, Thrive in 2025. Indie publishers gather to talk emerging technologies, distribution models, and more. They haven't actually announced the panelists yet, so I think that's the and more part. But this event, so this is going to be an in-person event, will be at Open Book in Minneapolis. And we do have a link up on the PubU page up on MiPA's website, as well as we'll be sending out an announcement about this fairly soon. So those of you that are in the area, it's a free event. IBPA is hosting it. We'll be there. MiPA will be there. Minnesota Book Publisher Roundtable will be there as well. So it's kind of a sort of a preview or a kickoff to what will be coming in May, which is the IBPA's Publishing University. So that's exciting. And then what other announcements do I have? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, that's it. Okay. So I think we're going to turn it over to Josh here. Hi, Josh.
Hi,
Good.
Paul.
So tonight's speaker and my friend and MIPA's treasurer, Josh Weber. So Josh is at Calumet, where he has been since 2017. He's currently in the role of operations director. Do I have that right, Josh?
That is correct.
Okay. Your title has changed over the years, so that's good. You've
Good.
seen all aspects of it, marketing campaigns, proofing manuscripts, communicating with authors. And as if that wasn't enough, he likes to volunteer for things. So he's also the show producer for the Minneapolis radio program Right on Radio. And as part of what he does, he's also administrative coordinator for Afton Press. And then, of course, treasurer for MIPA, which is, of course, the most important thing that Josh does. So, I guess that's all. So, Josh, if you want to take it away,
Sure.
and
Thanks, Trevor.
I should mention for everybody else, if you would mute yourselves, um, that way we don't interfere with Josh.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Mhm.
Let me just get into, well, I'll do another, just add to the introduction here. So, yeah, I've been the operations director for Calumet now since I think 2020. But before that, I initially started as an intern and then graduated to be a publishing associate. And then that mostly dealt with acquisitions and looked at manuscripts and doing a lot of online marketing channels as well, trying to develop our visibility online. And as Paul mentioned, Tuesday nights I would usually be with Right on Radio, either doing an interview or engineering the soundboard. But I'm here tonight, folks, talking to you about publishing. Let's begin. Okay. So, publishing possibilities from manuscript to market 2025. What is publishing? This is something I have spent probably way too much time thinking about over the years, especially I think with how easy it is to put any kind of content out there in the world. If you go on Facebook, you can just do an automatic posting of something. It raises a question of what publishing is. Just for the focus of our discussion, though, I will just talk about what publishing is related to books. To have a published book, it just means it's the process of creating a book as an object, and then made as a product made available for people to purchase. It is fundamentally about publication rights. It revolves around the legal agreements that allow a publisher to reproduce, distribute, and sell an author's work, essentially granting them the necessary permissions to make the work publicly available. And the big thing that a realization I had a bit later on with publishing is that it's more than just making a book and then just having it just a finished product of a book, but it also requires duplication and also distribution. If you have a book made, you can't just put it out on a park bench somewhere and expect people just to read it. You have to actually reproduce it and distribute it to along different channels to make sure it's available to a broad audience. This last quote here, I really want to talk about, and what I pretty much just said right there, into some, it just means making a book public. Publishing means a cadre of professionals who are taking on the incredible difficulty and complexity and expense of making something public. Another consideration I had when I started putting together these notes is that publishing, I think its increasing relevance in the world today is that it's rapidly in this rapidly transforming age of AI. We're oversaturated with content, and there's an abundance of content created by the internet. Publishing ultimately is an art around curation. It involves the omission of content is vital when making decisions about what we printed on the page. Publishing is really about framing content and going through a selection process to increase an emotion you're trying to evoke on the page or increase the explanatory power of whatever you're talking about. Publishing matters. What publishing is not. Publishing is not printing. It does include the process of printing materials, though. Publishing is not only marketing, is not just editing, and it's not publicity. It involves all these different pieces to make publishing work. But these pieces on their own do not make publishing. It requires, it's multifaceted and efforts of everyone involved, from designing to editing to marketing to make publishing possible for a book. The different models of publishing. There is the traditional approach you can have with publishing, and one second here. With a traditional publisher, it pretty much just means the publisher is taking on the full financial risk with the work. They're the ones who put up all the costs for the production of that work. They'll handle the editorial aspects of it, the production of it, what places they'll be distributed, and also who's going to do the promotion of the book. Authors get a smaller royalty with a traditional within the traditional publishing model. I've seen rates between 5 to 15% talking to authors. Usually they get an advance before the book is made available, and they don't have a whole lot of creative control over the end outcome of the book that gets put out into the world. And also, typically with traditional publishers, they're trying to find the books that make the most sense and get the broadest appeal out there in the world. The books that'll have the most commercial appeal. Hybrid publishing, that is what with Calumet Editions is what I work with right now. Hybrid or author subsidized publishing involves the author investing part of the cost and sharing the financial risk of making a book. The term I usually use when I talk to authors when they come to my office is that it's a shared risk, shared reward arrangement. It means that they are sharing the responsibility of producing the work and also talking about it and making the book available and known out there in the world. It's a very democratic process, which can be frustrating if you're a publisher where the author has input and ideas that perhaps that you don't quite agree with, or the author doesn't agree with you. But I think at the end of it, the product is better as a result of that friction you have. The author gets a bigger return on the royalties that come with the book. And they also have more, like I just said, more control over the product. If they have ideas of what the design is going to be like on the cover of it, if they have a certain idea of, like I know, trying to think of a good example here recently. I had an author who they have a background in the arts, and she had an idea of what she wanted the cover to be. I wasn't really too keen on the idea of it. And so we talked about that, and I would use it in the future just as a reference or inspiration. And then didn't go so well when I gave a proposed idea of what I thought the cover is going to be. So we had to go back to the drawing board and found something we both liked. And of course, with hybrid, you have a bigger, broader appeal. You can do titles that would not be as commercially appealing. I think that it diversifies the spectrum of what you can get for books out into the marketplace, especially now where you're seeing where more titles with traditional publishers and the big five have a certain formula of what they want and what they expect an audience is going to have for buying books. I think it's increased the need to have hybrid publishers doing unique titles out there in the world. Um, there's a publisher I really like that was in town here called Six Emperor Serpent. I know that in Minneapolis that would partner with their authors and they would focus on speculative fiction, but it would be more it would focus on more diversity or have sort of unique takes on genre fiction. Like you'd have a person in the Wild West who might be non-binary, and it's hard to, I think, see those kind of titles within a traditional model. The last one I'm going to talk about here is DIY or author managed publishing. Just it's an author acting as their own publisher. It's when the author takes on the full financial risk. They're also the ones who are the recipients of all the return of all the earnings that come from the sales of their books. The appeal varies, and generally speaking, when I've seen author published works, they're not always of the best quality due to lacking a familiarity or a competence in knowing how to do design work or even knowing how to do a layout inside of the book. It's usually of a cheaper quality. It has not been properly edited, and you can see a lot of grammatical issues and errors going through it. It hasn't been properly proofread. All these issues pile up and make it look like it's just a self-published work. With author publishers, they typically will work with other service providers within the publishing industry to make the book possible. And so they'll partner with a designer or an editor to have the book made. They are not I mean, those entities are separate from them and they may come back to do future works, but they're just available on contract to publish the book for that author. Author expectations. Author participation is required in marketing and promotion. I think the day and age of having the author be a recluse and not doing anything to try to do any engagement or promoting their own work is gone. I think it's a thing of the past. Authors have to be involved in the process of making their work known to the public. The author's platform is their followers and connections. It serves as their network with Facebook, with Twitter, with having an account on Goodreads. These are the sites of engagement an author has, talking to their audience and answering their questions and hopefully selling their titles along with doing that. Beware predatory publishing. There's a lot of publishers out there who definitely are just trying to exploit a person who just wants to get their work made, but is not really interested in having a follow through, doesn't have a criteria they follow when trying to make it. It's really just a cash grab. These are the pieces where you see they're classified as being vanity publishing or, yeah. Okay, so the steps that go into actually making a book. Step one, acquisition. This is a stage where, as a publisher, we seek out authors we want to work with, or agents act on behalf of publishers to find authors they want to work with. Acquisition editors, well, they're the ones who they decide what makes financial and business sense for the publisher. They're the ones who, before anyone else, they will look at the manuscript. They will make a determination if there is some commercial viability with it. They will do a rough estimate of what the cost is going to be like in terms of the time for editing, the time for potentially maybe changing some of the narrative structures to make more sense, the turnaround time it's going to take depending on the length of the book as well. These are decisions that acquisitions editor consider when they're looking to bring on a book within the publishing entity. For profit publishers, the main thing that an acquisition editor is trying to find are the books that make the most money. Within a nonprofit publisher, they are trying to find the books that are consistent with their mission. Within my company, we're trying to do both. I mean, we're trying to raise the literary pedigree and also destigmatize the idea that being a hybrid publisher or what we like to call ourselves a joint venture acquisitional publisher is something that is on par with a traditional publisher, while also trying to sell books for that author as well. Manuscript rejection isn't something you should take personal. It just means that at that point that it's not going to align with the interests of that publisher at that time. It opens up other possibilities of other publishers that you could work with, and there's a fair chance that there's a lot of risk factor in original works that a publisher knows that they can't probably get back their investment if they do, and I think increases the need to have diverse voices and diverse channels of publishing titles. Manuscript to market, step two. After the title has been acquired by the publisher, we move into editing. Editing is just the art of reviewing and revising a manuscript for clarity, structure, and quality. There's a lot of different, I was talking to Paul about this yesterday. There is a lot of different specializations that go into editing. I'm going to focus on the big three that I talk about in-house and most publishers do talk about. The first one is developmental or substantive. This comes down to looking, I guess as a hierarchy, this would be the first step of looking at the structure of the text from the paragraph level. You're looking for internal consistency. You're looking for narrative consistency. If a character says something in one scene that perhaps they don't like a certain dish, or there's a quality that they are a pacifist, and in the next scene they're being violent, it doesn't make narrative sense. Those are changes that have to be done to the text to make it more realized and to make it make more sense. Presentation, verisimilitude, all those pieces come together, I think, to make it feel like the world is realized and lived in, and the logic that you have put into designing the book is consistent throughout. That's the role of a developmental editor. And yeah, concern with narrative techniques. This is something when I was an acquisitions editor, the thing I would look for mostly is if there's a tonal shift in the text, if they move from it being in first person or to third person. If there is an argument for why they have done this way, I'll talk to the author about that. And as long as it's consistent then with how they have that designed, that's fine. But generally speaking, they should stick with one tone when going out and writing their book. The second other piece of editing I'm going to talk about is line editing. This now goes um, down to the line or the sentence on a page. This checks for readability and flow of language. Addresses word or sentences that are bland. If something needs to be punched up, saying a person walks into a room and they jumped over the couch, you could change it to saying that they vaulted over the ottoman or something like that to make it more fleshed out, to make it more fun, more interesting, more engaging for the reader in the work. Also, line editing is involved when making changes to different words. You think that if there's a reader who doesn't really know what the term might mean or has multiple meanings, you would change that to enhance the meaning of the text. The last editing I'm going to talk about is copy editing. This is now down to the actual words themselves. This is when you're going to follow the conventions of grammar and structure and punctuation. This is checked for technical accuracy to make sure that you're spelling correctly, using comma placement correctly. Hyphens, dashes, pieces like that is what you're looking for in a text, and completeness of context as well. The two other pieces I'm going to talk about here. So the first one is going to be on proofreading. This is when I tend to think about this more as surface reviewing, is when you're looking at the speller, grammar, punctuation, captioning, hyphenation, breaks. It's done after the typesetting is complete. You're just doing like a spot check of the work itself, especially if you have a proof of the book. You're looking over all the pieces, making sure that it just has a clean, presentable appearance. Other editors to consider. Sensitivity raters has become more popular in recent years. There's a gentleman who is not here this evening, I believe, but Colin Muswell knows when I talked about extensively about sensitivity readings. He had a book called Becoming Minnesota, where he had an individual go through the text, make sure that the nines would not be offended by the content put into it, and that he was thoughtful about the treatment of the material related to indigenous members of Minnesota. There's fact checkers as well to go through to make sure that you are not making any fallacious claims in the text. And also translation work is important when it comes to editing, especially if there are some colloquial terms or things are unique or it needs to crack into one language, making sure that is consistent and made sense when you're changing from one language to another. Okay, the third step, this involves two pieces right here I'm going to talk about. The first one is focused on design. This is the process of creating a book, looking at the layout, typography, and the general character and aesthetic of the book. The first part of design is the cover design. When people refer to this, I know this is probably, a lot of this sounds probably like you just kind of duh, but I do think it's important to go over. Cover design focuses on the front, back, spine, and dust jacket of the book. Paul had this in his notes, and I thought it was funny, and I definitely wanted to include this. A designer is not the same thing as an illustrator. A designer is actually concerned with the general dimensions and look of the book itself. An illustrator is a person who's had different content or pieces on the book. If you have like a, I'm not sure, unique, if like Dune, if you had Shai Hulud or a worm coming on it, that would be a person who'd be interested in trying to come up with the illustration. That's going to make sense for a reader who's going to respond to the work. The designer itself is going to actually determine the placement of how the image is going to look. They maybe enhance the lighting of it, the shading of it, little pieces like that. And then the front cover, the elements that make it. Very early on with the authors I work with, I ask for an exact book title along with the subtitle to go along with it. Front cover blurb. And then I ask about the cover finish. Typically I'll talk a bit later about this for print on demand, but the two options you have are either matte or gloss. Generally speaking, when I think about matte finishes, I think about a work that is more literary, and gloss that's something more commercial, more for genre fiction. I know designers, or at least one of our designers, Gary, he prefers gloss just because it has more color with it, and with matte, you are desaturating the color. For whatever reason, I just think it looks a little more literary, more professionals may be the right term, but more presentable, I think, for a literary audience. And gloss has a more broader commercial appeal. Then the back cover. These are the contents that make up the back cover that I always ask from the authors. Be a one-sentence summary on the top part of it, going over the nature of the book. A book description that's not too long, but just enough to give an idea of what the book is about. And then the short author bio at the bottom. And then also a short endorsement if there's room available as well. That is decided by the designer and the publisher about where they want it and the placement of it. Okay, layout and formatting. This is the placement of the manuscript into the formatted document, defines and the look and feel of the interior. So this is something actually I tend to do early on just because it's easier for me in Word to navigate. This is when you're determining what we do is you'll have style headings. And that is when you set for the beginning of a chapter, we'll have a chapter heading, for example, and then you'll have a paragraph style to go underneath that, and section headings along with that, if for a nonfiction title, for example. Additional formatting. So these are considerations you have when you're putting these other assets into a book. They include images, illustrations, diagrams, maps, tables. If you ever really want to piss off the designer, you should ask them to do an image or illustration or a map really like right at the end of the making of a book. I've had this happen a couple times now where also an author had this image they wanted to have. This recently happened with a memoir we're doing where We had the manuscript fully formatted, ready to go, and then all of a sudden they decided that they wanted to have a bunch of images go into it, and they weren't exactly sure where they wanted to go, and then it meant then pushing the text around because when you're dealing with the layout of the interior, then you're pushing then images forward, which then moves the entire layout of the book itself. So it's a lot of work to do, and it's smarter to have an idea of what the layout's going to be well ahead of time. The thing I always tell with authors, keep it simple. When you're sending the manuscript to us, try not to have any side-by-side pictures going into it. It pushes the images together. It doesn't look the best when it's on the page. Unusual fonts don't look, they're unique. They maybe add some personality to it, but it doesn't always come out the best. And a lot of times when authors send me manuscripts, they usually try to prettify it by trying to make it look like a book before it's actually a book. I it takes a lot more time on my part having to fix all those things, and the author has to go back and remove those elements as well. It's a longer process and it's not necessary. So please do not prettify or try and make look your Word document like a book before it's actually a book. The front matter of the book. So there's a bunch of different pieces here. There's a lot. So I'm gonna go through all these. The first piece you'll have is the dedic. Oh, sorry about that. First piece is the dedication page. This is the piece of the in the front part of the book, which you make a heartfelt way to pay homage and give support to someone who has helped you along the process of getting the book made. An epigraph is a short quote said at the beginning. I tend to think of this as being like the introduction title you have for a television series. It gives you a mindset of the author, what they're thinking, how it relates to the content of the book. Table of contents. This involves what the book all includes, gives you direction of where you can find the different pieces in the book, like the chapters. Acknowledgements, thanking people who are instrumental in helping the book get made. And the last, a couple more pieces here. And forward as well. Forward is reserved for, so forward usually is when an author will have a piece talking about the nature of the book they're talking about, giving some commendations about the value of what they're discussing and how it's related to the field they're dealing with. It's nonfiction. The preface, author describes situations surrounding the book, gives context of what was going on while they're writing their book. And then lastly, the introduction, which is about the content of the book and gives a primer of what the reader's going into before they start the reading of the book. So back matter, we have the epilogue, the steps beyond the main story that's impactful, that it's more like a stylistic choice, I suppose, and that decision made if you want to feel like somehow there's distance passed after you have concluded the overall story. The appendix just provides additional information on the subject of the book. Glossary, the dictionary, different terms are relevant to, especially if you're in like a specialized field that requires knowing a lot of different terms and unique identifiers that you would not probably know just in your daily speech. It's good to have that in the back of the book. Bibliography listing the sources that were cited throughout the book. An index. Index is a compiling in an alphabetical order of different terms or concepts in the book, and also the page numbers where you can find those pieces. And then way at the end of it, you'll have the author bio. Now, it's a longer bio compared to the author bio you would have on the back cover of a book. So galleys, what are they? This is something that I've had a lot of authors ask me when I tell them that after we've done the main production work of the book in-house and we're moving it to print and for distribution, I'll tell them that they can look over the galley to give their ideas of what they think about that. If there's changes need to be made before we actually publish it, this is the time to do it. And they ask me, what is a galley? They are the documents showing the book's interior pages or cover. They are the pre-printed version of them. They also could be served as ARCs that you send out to reviewers or people who you want to have endorsements for your book. The Guts Galley, this would just be a version of the book that only has the interior pages of the book, and then the Cover Galley would show the entire contents of the book, the cover, the back cover, spine, and so on. Typical standard book galley dimensions, the most common is to have it in 6x9 for paperback. For print on demand, the main options you'll have would be 6x9, 5.5 by 8.5, and then 5x8. And then, I already mentioned this already, but the time to make revisions to the book is at the galley stage. You reach out to us, and then we're the ones who possess the native files to make the corrections you want to see in the galley before it's published. And then, yeah, authors need to submit those changes. Production. This is now moving to the stage of the book looking like a book. This is the printing and binding of the physical contents that make the book. Production and planning is vital for design and market planning. I got smarter over time working with Calumet and realized it's better to send a production form right around the time we have entered a partnership with the author, and then we'd ask them then to fill the pieces they want for the book. That would be the time where they decide if they want the book to be 5x8 or 6x9. They want the cover finish to be matte or to gloss. All those pieces are decided at that time. So I'm going to go over the different options of what you can do with printing the book right now. So the first option I've mentioned a few times is print on demand. The digital printing process of prints and binds as they're ordered. This involves having no storage costs with it. There is zero inventory and has a built-in distribution network with it. It does have lower quality print though, and there's fewer options as I've hinted already in the past. Digital printing, in case you're not familiar with, is just the transferring of colors directly to the paper. And there is a stigma around print on demand because it does have lower quality and not a lot of options to go along with it. So I want to also, so I want to show you the breakdown of the main print on demand services that are available. There's Amazon KDP and Ingram. There are benefits and cons to both. Amazon has the bigger market dominance and has the bigger distribution channel. It's actually, I think, a bit easier to work and navigate with as well. You do have available worldwide on Amazon's website stores. Kindle dominates the ebook marketplace as well. And there's an option with publishing a Kindle version of the book. You put yourself, it's called here the Kindle Online Lending Library, but if you do have it, you would know it as called Kindle Unlimited. It's just a service that enables you so people who subscribe to Kindle Unlimited can read any book that is published on Amazon as a Kindle and can read it unlimited number of titles. And then as a publisher, we receive royalties for each page read from people enrolled in that Kindle Unlimited service. The Ingram, they're the largest book wholesaler in the world. Many booksellers will not stock Amazon printed books, so your option, if you want to have them go into bookstores, is to print your books with Ingram. However, I have discovered lately, so I actually publish with KDP and with Lightning Source. That's the main subsidiary, the company that deals with print on demand services with Ingram. Bookstores are being more selective. They won't say that it's print on demand from Ingram, but they'll say that it's just not something that would be viable to put into the store. So now I've also recognized the stigma is also moving over to Ingram, Lightning Source as well, or telesettlement without return privileges and discount. Yeah, with Amazon, with the orders of the books, there is no return option on the people who buy those books. With Ingram, though, you do have to, there is the possibility to get a return. And with the books that are going into bookstores, it's mandatory you have it set at a discount. You used to have more options with this. Now you can't do it unless you have it at 55% for a title listed on there. And you get less returns then for the sales. Okay, so I just talked about print on demand. I'm going to talk briefly also about short run printing. This is also digital printing as well. This allows you to produce small quantities at a time. That's not on demand though. Usually between 20 to 1,000 copies. It is digital. And then the other printing option is doing it with offset. Offset is so briefly just give you a description of what offset printing is like. Maybe Paul could do a better job afterwards telling people what that's like, but it's the printing method used. It's using a series of rollers to transfer an image from a plate to paper. You initially design the image you want to print, and then the design that's going to be printed is engraved on a metal plate. Then there's ink rollers that transfer the image from the plate to the rubber blanket, I think. And the rubber blanket transfers that image to a paper. Offset printing uses separate plates for each color. Digital printing, again, just transfers the individual colors onto the page. Offset printing is more economically efficient, especially if you're doing books in higher volumes, like more than 1,000 books at a time. It does have a higher quality. There's more options of what you can do with printing with it as well. Binding. Binding just refers to the fastening of individual sheets together. If you And then finishing is the process of decorating the outside of the book. This is when you will have the gilded edges on the side of the book. If you want to have embossed or raised lettering on the front for the title of the book. And soft cover, paperback and hardcover refers to the book board that form the cover. Soft cover is assembled from cut sheets, glued, perfect binding is what I imagine most of you are familiar with. And then also hardcover, which is folded and sewn sheets into blocks, which are called signatures. And when talking about production with ebooks, so usually after a book is made and is ready to go to be published on when I put it before I put up on KDP or on Lighting Source, we also do a conversion of it and make an EPUB file of the book that I then upload as a Kindle. Okay, so marketing publicity, how the public discovers your book. I think the core of publishing has evolved now over time. It used to be, I think, about making just content available, but now it's more important to it's more about finding markets and audiences or possibly making those markets and audiences for the content you're producing. This is probably, I think, the hardest part when it comes to publishing. You're dealing now with an upwards of 4 million books are published in the US each year, and 500,000 to a million are through traditional channels that are based on ISBN assignments. And then I was curious about the statistic of this, so I looked it up. 1.4 million self-published titles released on KDP in 2024. I'm saying all these things to give you a sense of the competition that is going out there now, which means it's very hard to do that and try to sell books. Breaking out is the hardest aspect of publishing for new titles and unknown authors. The focus now in marketing is on the consumer, or at least that is my focus as well, versus trying to sell to a retailer or a bookseller or a librarian or a place like that. I'm trying to target the individual niche audiences that I think are going to be most responsive to the books that I'm selling and wanting to buy it. And then I wanted to just kind of give you a listing. So, I mean, I didn't want to go through all these pieces, but just to give you an idea of what you can do for marketing your book, I have encouraged all my authors to explore every single one of these options. I remember when I first got involved with publishing, blogging was something that had was more prominent, but now is shelved over time. But having friends and family come out there and post customer reviews for you or by word of mouth is also good. Goodreads is a good place to talk about yourself as an author or, yeah, and posting blogs as well. Book clubs, Facebook advertising, speaking engagements, and book awards like MiPA with our Midwest Book Awards is a great place to raise the profile of your book and getting more recognition for your titles. distribution, and fulfillment. This is how the public actually gets your books in their hands. There's a few different pieces that are going into this. They're the wholesalers. They're the individuals who actually do the storage of the books and ship them out to different retail sites, booksellers who will hold the books. Fulfillment is the process of receiving, storing, and shipping books to customers. And then the main distributors work with publishers and sell titles directly to retailers, bookstores, and libraries. I know the main person I talk with or work with in town is Itasca Books. They are a distributor and also deal with fulfillment. So distributors can also, yeah, so they all stock books, handle orders from booksellers, and have a dedicated sales force. And direct sales. These are the books the publisher or authors sell themselves. This just is a term referring to publishers going to different book events or authors going to events and selling the books directly to the public. And the last thing I really want to talk about is publishing as a business. Publishing is not just a pipe dream. It's not just a way to sell your book, but it is a through and through business with layers of complications and difficulties and nuance and trying to get your book out there into the world. And the first and foremost, what you need to do is define what those goals are as a publisher. Are you doing this because you have a mission you're trying to do? You're trying to have a message you want people to know about your book? Are you trying to get profits for the sales of the books you want to have? Determining your goals as a publisher will help you also determine what kind of roles you want to have within your organization. We have a person, Gary is the founder of Calumet, but he also serves as a designer. Ian is a co-founder for Calumet as well. He operates as an editor. I serve as an administrator along with a project manager. Had an individual who's working as our marketing specialist. She has now left, and so the role has been absorbed by our acquisitions editor. And you should have a person at the helm who has an idea and a vision of how they want to lead your company into the future. Brand awareness is crucial. As I just talked about with the promotion and publicity, it is extremely vital to having your books be known in the world, increase the visibility of books. You can do this through websites, through speaking events, literary events. And the Fort Rights is something that we have explored in the past that, frankly, I have not done the best with. I am the biggest international site I know for book publishers coming together is at the Frankfurt Book Mesa. I went there a couple years ago to try to sell foreign rights. There were layers of a bunch of mishaps that didn't really work out the way I wanted to. But that's the point where you would try to sell foreign rights for your book to have an international market, to have different publishers pick it up, do translations with it, and also involve the rights. It's on the movie rights to get made into either a series or a movie and the production of audiobooks as well. And the big thing I cannot preach enough is making sure you are competent in knowing how to have different statements on the profit and loss of your publishing company, looking at the return on investment of the work you do on making the book, going out to different events, paying for advertising, and looking at the returns you get on the sales of books in the process. That can help you assess the cost of creating and selling future books as well. Some helpful links for everyone to take a look at here. I actually have a printout next to my desk from IBPA. It's a higher publishing criteria. It's especially important if you're concerned about predatory publishing or people that you are questioning the reputation of. This gives a breakdown of what those pieces they should have as a company to be acknowledged as a hybrid publisher. And if you want a little more in-depth talk about different publishing pathways, Jane Friedman has a website that talks about this and is dedicated to showing examples and the merits of each of the pathways. You can take a look at those right there. Oops. And that's it. That is me. I'm Josh Weber. I'm the operations director of Calumet. That's a sick picture of me at the ruins of Volubilis in North Africa. At the bottom is a website for my company, Calumet Editions. And if you want to contact me at all with any questions, my email is right there, and I can give it to you after this discussion as well.
Thanks, Josh. I was copying links into the into the chat for people. That's a lot. And I
A
didn't
lot
even
of content, a
see.
lot of pieces to go over. I'm sorry if I was going really quickly. I was trying to do as much, but also give enough time for questions at the end here too.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. You're great on time.
Okay.
So yeah, with that, are there any questions? Um, Allison, were there any in the chat? I think you'd.
There was one in the chat, but I believe it was deleted. I think it was about acquisitions, editing, and the best way to figure out. And I think Josh kind of covered it toward the end there with the P&L statement. But how do acquisitions editors determine whether a book will or will not make money?
Well, that is actually a good question,
Yeah,
Josh,
and
if you want to talk
and
about
if
that a
that
little
was
bit
your
more.
question and I totally misrepresented that, please let me know. I just unfortunately it was in the chat, but now it's disappeared from the chat, so I'm not sure what happened there. But if that was your question, please feel free to restate.
I have a question.
Sure. What's your name?
Dan Miller.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, otherwise known as a copyright detective. So
I
my
can see
question has
that.
to do with, you can see where this is going.
Yes.
Are you encountering any issues with people using AI content yet in the text and you're trying to figure out what is theirs and what is AI's?
I am not at that stage yet, to tell you the truth. I know that's consideration that me and Paul actually talked extensively about yesterday. I've actually used so when I've had periods where I try to do um, building advertising campaigns and I have limited time to do this, I've had to actually use AI myself to develop the copy around that. Actually using tools though of discerning which pieces of text are AI generated versus people writing it, I have not actually explored yet and have not encountered, to tell you the truth.
I used one with a book that my wife wrote just to check out the platform. And the response was there was a 50.9% chance that the book was either written by a human or by AI. I don't know how to interpret that. But the we looked at the text, and a lot of the text that you had, they indicated that more than likely it was created by AI. Well, she wrote this book a few years ago before AI was even around, so we know it's 100% her. And the AI platform, her writing was done so well that there were no errors in structure and grammar and all that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things they look for is they look for perfection because people aren't perfect. So that's one way you detect AI. But this
Well,
thing's coming down the road like a freight train, though.
out of curiosity, how does it actually, do you know what tools it uses to just see within the text to pick out where it's an AI or how does it determine the likelihood of whether or not it's an AI that's wrote it or a person? I guess the one thing that I've learned with ChatGPT especially is that there are certain phrases it repeatedly use over and over again. There's not enough variety. I guess that'd be the first thing I would look at, but
Right.
no, I've not used any tools actually checking that yet.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of confidence in the AI detection tool, at least the one I used. It just wasn't there yet. But that's a big problem with AI sneaking. Now I use AI all the time. I use it 10 times a day to try to find stuff. I use it for research.
Yeah.
And that's not a problem. The flip side of that is the AI component is not copyrightable, and that's in the courts right now and everything else. So sorting out what you can copyright and what you can't
Right.
that has had any AI involvement at all. So people are going to have to be a lot more careful. That's why I was phrasing the question if you've encountered it yet, because it's coming.
No, not yet. And then Jennifer in the chat here, do you ask your authors to disclose whether they use AI, Josh? No, I have not, but we probably should do something like that in the future. That's something I guess I'm being very arrogant and think that if it was AI, I'd be instantly suspicious of that. I could just kind of detect it unconsciously. But no, that's something I have encountered and have not done yet, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Well, to cover myself, so I'm with Dragon Street Press, and to cover ourselves, legally, it's part of our submission form when they submit is to, a laundry list of things they have to agree and warrant. I use the official legalese. Um, And one of those is that the manuscript is not the product of any artificial intelligence.
The one thing we do is, and
Well,
I know
just to
that,
jump in before you say that, Josh, Scott, you're a traditional publisher, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And that was something I was wondering also if there's, a little bit different take on, those kind of I was going to say ultimatums, but that's not it. Those sort of disclosures, in a hybrid press versus a traditional press, because it's again, it comes back to that who's bearing the risk, who's bearing the monetary aspects of it.
Right. Good point.
I was just going to say, so I mean, I don't ask the authors, I have not asked the authors to disclose whether or not AI has been used in the making of it, but I know now it's become more and more commonplace, like publishing on KDP, they do have the option, you can list whether or not AI has been used in the making of the book, but it's vague on the language of it doesn't necessarily tell and give any indication to the person seeing it on the production details if it's AI and used the making of the manuscript or if it's for the cover work or anything else like that.
Well, for instance, the Authors Guild, does not, programs or such as Pro Writing Aid and you know, of that nature, like Grammarly, and there are AI isms being built into things like Scrivener and other software. Are essentially viewed as super
Assistance.
super modern like thesauruses and so they're support things. So what the Authors Guild basically kind of draws the line at the actual words. The who's creating or generating the actual words as opposed to support programs that point out structural issues or point out weak verbs and things like that. And in fact, the it was a week or two ago, and Authors Guild is who they're partnering with Created by Humans, to put a stamp or to offer a stamp on Authors Guild author books that will say this was created by a human. And that will be, and right now it's only available to authors, but a future iteration will enable that to publishers as well. But in any case, so what they said, I think the president of the Authors Guild was saying that there's an expectation that there might be, some words in a manuscript where a like Pro Writing Aid says, offers a suggestion to, phrase, 3 or 4 words, that wouldn't suddenly make the manuscript the product of in their view and in their lawyers' views, suddenly that it's now the product of artificial intelligence. So there's some gray area, presumably, in all
Yeah.
of that. So I'll shut up now.
Yeah, definitely.
Other questions? You can unmute yourself if you'd like to just pipe up or put something in the chat.
Answer the question regarding acquisition editing and profitability. The ways in which an acquisitions editor might determine whether or not a book is profitable.
Sorry, Allison, can you say that again?
I'm sorry. Can we answer the question of, what kind of goes into for acquisitions editing? What comes into what goes into determining whether or not a book would become profitable?
Would it be profitable?
Yeah. If you are deciding whether or not to take on a book, what are some of the things you're thinking about or you're looking at when you're trying to determine whether or not that book is going to be profitable?
Right off the bat, the first thing I look at is for organization. If there's like a neatness to it, and then from there, it's a question of how much work and how much input I'm going to go into actually doing the work. The less work I have to do, the faster turnaround I can have actually the book being published and being put out to the world. That's the first thing I look for. It's one of those things that I guess I'm trying to be better at is to tell you the truth. Anytime I ever get a manuscript and an author comes and they have a vision of what they want to do, it's hard for me to turn them away. I really want them. That's not me. Like even if they don't have a lot of money, I mean, I want to do it, and I always the cleanness, the neatness factor is one thing I look at. Also the potential. If I see somehow they have some idea in place that I think that I can be molded and partnering with me as a publisher, I can help mold that vision in cleaning up the content with it, focusing on the developed substantive editing parts of it. That's when I started thinking about the viability and whether or not it could turn around and could be sold for something. A lot of it just comes down to the work, to tell you the truth. That's really what I'm thinking about. If I like the work already, it's pretty easy. Then I'll find a way to make it work for me too. Um, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I guess because I'm not a traditional publisher, I don't really the commercial aspect. Yes, I want a book to sell, but it's not. I don't know. I because I'm a hybrid publisher, I like the idea of having diversifying what our entries are and what we have in our catalog for a year. So tell you the truth, if Stranger or Weirder, I'm more interested and want to see. It's probably not the best way to look at publishing and being a business manager, but that's kind of why I am doing what I'm doing.